to Slice of Seattle on KUGR Cougar College Radio.
Good morning, Cougs. You are listening to Slice of Seattle on KUGR Cougar College Radio. It is an absolutely beautiful day on the Palouse today because it is game day. That's right, the Cougs are back, and it is a home game against the University of Idaho at Martin Stadium. I don't think there could have been any more perfect day to have college football back. I'm excited for it. I'm going to be at that game. Still the question mark, they haven't announced who the starting quarterback is going to be. I know I say that, but probably during the show they're going to announce it, and then I'm going to look really stupid. But that's just about usually how it goes. Currently, I mean, we've talked about before the kind of debate between whether or not it's going to be Zeviak House or it's going to be Jackson Potter. If you ask me, I think it's going to be Jackson Potter's, but we'll we gotta see as soon as game time rolls around. We'll see who Jimmy Rogers is going to roll with. But mark my words, I think it's going to be Jackson Potter. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to take a step back here just for a bit because we have a guest that I was able to talk to earlier in the week. I recorded it on Thursday, so before you clown me for maybe talking about stuff in this recording that is a little outdated, we did record this on Thursday, but I'm going to play it here for you today because, ladies and gentlemen, I had the very good fortune of being able to sit down and talk with the one and only Couch GM. Connor Webb, co-host of the Couch GM podcast, sat down with me on Thursday. We got to talk some Cougs, got to talk some Mariners, talk some MLB division realignment. It was an absolutely amazing conversation. If you're not following Couch GM on YouTube, Instagram, wherever you're getting your sports content, what are you doing? Go follow them. He has such amazing content for the Mariners specifically, but also for the Cougs. He's a Cougar alumni. Graduated back in 2016. You got to go give him a follow. But again, I'm going to take a step back here, and I'm going to play this interview. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, here is this week's interview with Connor Webb, co-host of the Couch GM. Let's take it away. Hey, everybody. We are here with Connor Webb, co-host of the Couch GM podcast. Connor, how are we doing today?
Doing great. College football is back this weekend. NFL right after that. The Mariners are right there in the playoff hunt. So, I mean, if you're a sports fan, you got to be pretty excited right now.
Yeah, this is kind of that good little, I think October is kind of that time where it's really exciting because you got football, baseball, and hockey going on. But right here is like the off season for football is wrapping up. The off season for hockey is wrapping up. Baseball is it's heating up towards like the playoff race. So it's like, it's like a great time to like talk sports and everything because there's just so much stuff going on right now.
Especially if you're a Couch GM, if you're into fantasy sports, that's kind of where the name came from. Like next week is the first week of baseball playoffs for our fantasy league. We got fantasy football drafts all over the place, and that's firing up next week. So, yeah, it's a really fun time right now.
Yeah, so let's jump in. Let's talk about. You mentioned it. College football is back this Saturday. Technically, week 0 was last Saturday, but This is like really like where it starts. Cougs versus Vandals, which I think is like that's such a great like opening day matchup to do U of I versus the Cougs. And I kind of want to talk to you about the situation right now. It feels like there is a vacuum at the quarterback position, even though like it's actually a pretty tight quarterback room. It's Jimmy Rogers hasn't really said or really made it clear who that starting QB was going to be. So I wanted to ask you, who are you kind of looking at as potentially being that starting QB for this year?
I do think the assumed starter is Zevi, at least to start the game, to start the year. We saw his appearance in the Holiday Bowl this last year. He's shown his potential, obviously, at Bryant, which was an FCS level. He balled out for 3-4 years at Bryant. Comes to Washington State, from all things that we've heard last year, it was a close quarterback race with John Mateer. And so, heading into the spring and through spring, it was assumed, obviously, Zevi. And then you got a Johnny Shepard, who is a transfer from Rutgers. And then you also get Julian Duggar, who's a transfer from Pitt. Both of those guys are opposite-handedness, and they're both dual threat guys. Zevi isn't like a dual threat guy, as he's been described as. He's elusive. He can get out of the pocket and move around, not like a Luke Falk to where he's just a pocket guy. But then you got a Johnny Shepard, who we had on the podcast and, asking him about what his NCAA ranking should be. And he's basically like, yeah, I should be a 90 plus on everything, like throwing on the run, speed, all of these different things like accuracy. And then you got Julian Duggar, who I believe was a track guy in high school. He's a left-handed thrower, and he's got that elusiveness. Julian and Johnny don't have much experience. Zevi has the most experience out of those guys, and they're also younger. So the assumed starter is Zevi. You also have Jackson Potter, who's a pocket passer, also that can be there. But you assume it's Zevi. I could see them using multiple quarterbacks at some point. It's going to be a lot of fun to see. Like that's the thing is completely new coaching staff, 75 new players this year. No one knows what to actually expect. Like you can assume some things that are going to happen, but it's going to be a completely new offense, hopefully a much better defense. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think when you mentioned Jackson Potter, it feels like a lot of the buzz. He took first team reps in one of the open practices they did this year. He's not. I don't think he's exactly kind of like John Mateer, that kind of talent level where I think he'll like it was last year, where he'll kind of swoop in and take that starting spot from Zevi. But I do like I think I talked about this in one of my episodes last week where it's like I kind of feel bad for Zevi because he lost out on that starting spot last year to John Mateer, which I mean it's John Mateer, he wins that spot. He's incredibly talented. Then John Mateer transfers. Zevi starts in the Holiday Bowl, so it seems like okay, Zevi's going to be our starting quarterback. Then that means for next year. And then you get Shepard, you get Duggar, you get these transfers, you get Potter. It's it just like all of a sudden he has like no room to breathe inside that quarterback room. And like you said, he is the most like experienced quarterback, especially like on the Cougs specifically. But I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I definitely have my eye on Jackson Potter. I think that he's been kind of turning a lot of heads. I think my question to you is, and you mentioned the possible use for like multiple quarterbacks on this team. Do you think like if they start Zevi Eckhouse in that first game against Idaho, he has a rough outing, not doesn't put up the best performance. Do you think they go for that second game to or against SCSU with Jackson Potter or Shepard or Duggar or who are you kind of putting as like your right next on deck after Eckhouse?
So from the sounds of it, first off, like, the competition coming in, as Jimmy Rogers says, like this isn't the YMCA. Like we're trying to bring in the best talent that we can to Washington State, and whoever is the best athlete is going to be the one that's playing. I think no matter who starts the game, it's going to be a very short leash, and I think that's at every position. Basically, if you're not performing quickly, you're going to be replaced by someone that is going to be given an opportunity, and so they're going to find out very quickly. I think who their guy is going to be. If things aren't looking great after a quarter or after a few drives, then they're going to make a change. Behind Zebi, just from the standpoint that I would prefer someone that is like a dual threat guy. And just looking at South Dakota State University's prior offenses with Mark Gronowski, who was their quarterback, who is now transferred to Iowa. He was a big dual threat guy. They involve their quarterbacks a lot within that rushing game also. So my assumed second guy would be a Johnny Shepard, just from his overall ability. I've seen clips of Julian Duggar. Jackson Potter is the most pocket passer type profile, I would say. So, I mean, when you have four different guys, it could be anybody. That's a good problem to have if they're all really at that top type of level to where they're all competing for that starting job.
And so like get that coaching style with Jimmy Rogers, like you meant it's like a short leash, right? Like a lot of these guys, if they're not producing at the levels that they're expected to, they can get because like you think about that depth chart that they released, it was or at every single position. And
Right.
when he was talking to media yesterday, I think he said that kind of embodies his philosophy. It's like if you're not doing it, it's going to go
Next man
to
up.
exactly. Do you like that mentality? I mean, as I know that some people might view that as like you're not trusting your guys, you're not instilling confidence in them or something like that. But do you think that that's like a mentality that could be a winning mentality, or do you have like some critiques of that maybe?
I mean, I think locking down a position to an established veteran that isn't performing and just allowing him to keep playing, even though it's maybe bringing down the overall team down, I don't think that's the best route. You know, obviously, some security is a good thing for a player's mindset, but then also you got to have that fire underneath you, and you got to be able to perform on game day, especially these first couple games. Idaho, you got a home battle. Idaho is ranked 12th in the FCS coaches poll, so they're not. This isn't going to be like an easy matchup. Like you can't just go into a game expecting to blow out a team type thing. But then you got to get your starters lined up pretty quickly, and you also have to have depth. So if we've also heard them talk about how they're going to cycle through guys throughout games. So just because you're not a starter doesn't mean that you're not going to be playing. You're probably going to see two or three deep at every position that is going to be having an impact on the game at some point. And you got to get your starters figured out. You know, we got a less than a month now until the Apple Cup. Then you're heading out to Ole Miss later in October. So you got some good teams that you're going to be competing against, and you just have to play the best talent no matter how old they are or who they are.
Yeah, the schedule for this year for the Cougs is pretty intense. I think we're playing Ole Miss twice. We're playing Oregon State twice. I mean, I feel like we kind of like almost like catfished people into getting a better schedule last year, and then we kind of imploded the halfway through.
We got like 10 different conferences that we're playing in this year, all throughout the
Yeah,
country, and you're going to the East Coast multiple times. So we'll see how the travel impacts these guys.
yeah. I mean, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a lot of fun football, but I don't, it's just I think it's gonna be a lot more of a rougher year than it was last year, just in terms of that schedule difficulty. And I mean, the Apple Cup in Pullman, I think is gonna be super entertaining. I mean, that's my first Apple Cup that would be here at Martin Stadium, so I think that that's gonna
Nice.
be just like a super electric game. I'm really looking forward to that. Are you coming down to Pullman for that one at all, or are you staying up in the west side?
Yeah, I'll be on the west side. My wife and I actually had our first son about a month, just over a month ago. So
Congrats.
I'm kind of locked down for the time being. It's going to be nice to be holding him sitting on the couch watching the game this year.
Yeah, start him young, man. Got to be a Coug fan.
Yeah, yeah, he'll have a
Um,
cute jersey on for sure.
I love it. So I also want to ask you too. So obviously, there's been a revamp of the roster of sorts, especially with Rogers coming in, brought a lot of guys from SDSU. I wrote an article for the Daily Evergreen here at Wazoo doing a roster breakdown, and it felt like when I was going through every single position, it was just constantly like SDSU, SDSU, SDSU. Like he just brought guys from like just numerous positions. But who's a guy on this Cougar roster that you're looking at that you think is like he's going to be a breakout guy, and I think he's going to stand out this year? So who is that to you?
Well, I'm gonna highlight one guy from defense and one guy from offense, and these are the two guys that we've heard from players, from coaches that are just like the biggest standout players. One is Tucker Large, who's a safety transfer from South Dakota. He was a FCS All American last year, and so he's one of the team captains heading into this season. And we've heard from some players or coaches that like he's one of the best athletes that people have seen. That like he just flies around. I'm excited to see how this defense plays and their coverage and seeing Tucker cover that backfield or the deep part of the field, and then also him putting the hit stick on some guys. It's going to be really interesting to see all of these players that are coming from an FCS level school competing against an FBS level programs. But then also talking with like defensive tackle Mike Sanjo Njiki, he was a transfer from SMU, and we asked him about he's played at a few different levels as well, and it's like how big is the difference in talent from FCS to FBS. And he mentioned that FBS guys might, or bigger programs like an SMU or an SEC school, guys might be an inch taller and 5-10 pounds heavier. There's not an insane difference obviously in certain positions comparing different universities there are, but I think Tucker Large and Caleb Francel, who's a linebacker, also transfer, and these other guys that they brought in, I don't see why they can't, put up the same type of production at this level compared to FCS. And then on the offensive side, I would say Angel Johnson, running back. I've, the coaches have been very tight-lipped on saying anything about him. One, it's because you don't want word getting out and then having a guy transfer. Obviously, it's too late for them to transfer now, but and then also for defenses to prepare for them. But Donald Kirkwood Jr., who's the running backs coach, he said that Angel Johnson is special, and that's really all that he would say. And so I'm really excited to see Angel Johnson, what he can do on the ground, and then Tucker Large and as a safety.
I think definitely Angel Johnson kind of replacing Wayshawn Parker, who I mean last year, I mean Wayshawn was like super fun to watch running the ball. It was funny. I had a class with Wayshawn Parker, so it would be super funny because it's like you like would go Saturday watch the game. He would just like put on a show, and then Monday morning he'd just be like sitting next to you in class. You're just like
Yeah.
that's like it's surreal. No, I like that pick. Angel, I mean, I'm super excited to see what Angel Johnson does. I definitely also I'm glad you brought that up too. That kind of the difference between playing at the FCS and FBS level, because that's one of the things that was kind of weighing on my mind was how are some of these guys like, and like you mentioned, there's not that big of not a huge jump from going from FCS to FBS. Like FCS schools can totally beat an FBS school. But that's definitely a question on a lot of people's mind where it was like, are these transfers going to be able to produce at that FBS level? For me, my guy who I think which is going to be a standout this year on the Cougs, I'm going to go with Josh Meredith. I say that, and he was kind of also a standout last year as well. Um, but Jimmy Rogers kind of talked about ahead of fall camp when he did a press conference, he kind of mentioned the fact that Josh Meredith to him was really kind of sticking out. Um, and I was like the other day, I was watching like highlights from the Apple Cup, and one of them was like Josh Meredith diving for a catch in the end zone. So I was like,
Mhm.
and I think with Kyle Williams getting drafted now with the Patriots, there's that kind of void at the wide receiver position. I think he fills that pretty nicely. So I think on offense we've kind of replaced those. We've replaced Wayshawn Parker running back with Angel Johnson most likely, and we've kind of replaced Kyle Williams with um Josh Meredith.
Mhm.
So I mean I definitely think the 30 plus transfers we had leaving last year definitely hurt us a lot, but I think we're in a pretty good spot at least offense wise with our running back and with our wide receiver.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you got Jeremiah Noga, who's a name that I didn't know until, this fall camp. He was a transfer from Oregon State. He's listed number one on the depth chart for wide receiver, whatever, however much weight you put into the depth chart that they put out. You also have Devin Ellison, who was a four-star JUCO wide receiver transfer. I want to say he was the top JUCO wide receiver transfer in the nation, something like that. He was really high up there, a four-star transfer at wide receiver. You got Jeremiah Noga from Oregon State, Devin Ellison. You then have Josh Meredith. You got other guys in that room also. So, I mean, you can go through every position group, and there's multiple guys that are, going to be really exciting to watch.
Yeah. If you're giving me a score prediction for this opening day, U of I versus Wazoo, what are you thinking? How do you think that game's going to shake out?
I said on our preview, I took 35-14 Washington State. I'm curious to see, with this offense, with the air raid, it could be very quick scoring, or you could be three and out pretty quickly. You have the potential to put up a lot of points with this new balance type offense. I'm curious to see, how many explosive plays there are, or or if it's just a ground and pound type game to where it's more low scoring, but then their defense does a good job of keeping points off the board for the opponent, or if they're able to put up the points like they were in prior years. So I'll go 35-14. Hopefully it's 35-0, but we'll see.
Yeah, I definitely think that this game, because it's going to be the first game with Jimmy Rogers at the helm. I think it's going to show a lot about what this Rogers regime is going to look like.
Yeah.
Um, if it goes really well against a team that you've had 20 plus straight wins against, um, that looks really good going into that season. And I think that that's like a sign that he's gonna build something here. Granted, I also think if you start out that game losing the first game to U of I in 20 plus years, that's like the complete
Oh yeah,
wrong.
that'd be awful.
That would be totally awful. Yeah. I like your prediction. I'm probably somewhere there too, putting up probably 30 plus there. I think our defense will stuff them a lot during that game. So I don't think that they're going to put up more than 20. And I do think we go up more than 30. So I'm kind of with you. I'm in that same kind of range of, I think it's going to be a good game. I mean, I'll always sit here and say I think the Cougs are going to win, but you
Yeah.
never know. It's a
And
lot.
it's
There's so many question marks.
and it's going to be about finishing games. Like in prior years, okay, we were able to get the lead and that type of thing, but then you end up losing the game for whatever reason, or it becomes shootouts at the end. And I mean, last year the defense was just awful. It was like 124th or something in the country in yards allowed per game. So it has to be a lot better than that.
Yeah. So the Cougs are gonna opening night against U of I this Saturday. We're recording this on Thursday, so when we play on Saturday, it'll be about a few hours before the game. So we either are gonna look really good when this airs, or we're gonna look really bad when this airs. So we'll see how that pans out. But hey, Connor, let's talk some Mariners baseball. How hype are you about this Vetter Cup win? Take what, 5 out of 6 against San Diego on the series? I mean, I was pretty excited, so I kind of want to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I do like that they have a series that is between the Mariners and the Padres. The Padres are one of the most young, up and coming, exciting teams in the National League, and it's not the Dodgers. You know, I can't stand the Dodgers. So the Padres are just a fun team in general to watch with Tatis and all these guys. They've got a solid rotation and stuff going on. Obviously, their GM is insane. You know, like these trades that he's making, he's basically emptying the farm system all the time. But they're a really exciting team, and to be able to take 5 of 6 from the Padres this year as a whole was huge. Yeah, so I think it was a great series. The Mariners are in a great spot right now. They're a game behind the Astros in the division. You have to go for the division, keep going for it. Astros got Jordan back. They traded for Correa, all this stuff. So it's going to come right down to it. I think they have what, like 28 games or so left in the season. So yeah, Mariners are in a great spot right now.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, it wasn't like we won the series against like the A's or the Angels or the Rockies. It was you took 5 of 6 on the season against the Padres, which who've been a
Yeah,
playoff team like
they might win the NL
every year.
West.
Yeah, like they're no like that's a really good team with a lot of really good players on it.
Yeah,
And but especially after that road trip, I mean, I
yeah,
wouldn't
that was
say
tough.
I'm like a bipolar fan of like going back and forth, but I definitely was like, this is not looking good. Like I was totally on the season is over, train for a little while after that road trip. But I mean that's a good way to come back and in that series against the Athletics and in that series against the Padres to be able to kind of get yourself back on track. And I do think yes, we're in a wild card like position right now, but you can't settle for the wild card right now. You got to take
Right.
advantage of the Astros, and that's the thing that's been frustrating me all year is that the Astros haven't even been having that good of a year. It's not
They've
like
been super injured.
yeah, they've been like not mid, but they've been very held back. They've been I think people have used the term the zombie Astros, where it's just like they're not even like it's not that they're like
They just need to
blocking
die
us.
already.
Yeah, it's like there's not even that they're like completely blocking us from that number one spot. It's just that we're not like reaching high enough to get there. Um, but I also want to ask your thoughts too on the Vetter Cup rivalry because I know people have some feelings about that. Even considering the fact that I think Eddie Vedder isn't a Mariners nor is he a Padres fan. I'm pretty sure he's a Cubs fan.
Yeah, I
So
saw that yesterday.
yeah, so I'm like I I like it. I think it's like a good kind of it's a West Coast. We're both West Coast teams. That's great. Um, it definitely feels like wasn't really a rivalry there beforehand, like history wise. So that
Right.
in that way, it doesn't make sense to me. Um, so I kind of want to get your feeling of like, do you think that this is like a real legitimate rivalry, or do you think it's kind of like a PR-y thing?
Well, no, it's for sure a made up thing. And, you know, I'm too young for Pearl Jam. Pearl Jam was started in Seattle, which is great. That's awesome. He lived in San Diego for a period of time, so that's why they started that. But then, yeah, I saw the stat yesterday that he's actually a diehard Cubs fan. So, like, we're creating a series or a rivalry between the Mariners and Padres for a Cubs fan. Again, like I think it's cool that they have a series, and if this continues for years, that would be awesome to have this matchup between the Mariners and the Padres. But I'm just like, okay, whatever for the the better part of it. I made a graphic during the first series. I relabeled it the Vader Cup, and then just had Darth Vader on there because I mean it's just a play off of it. But yeah, I don't know. It's cool if you're into that stuff, but um, I'm not like super pumped about the that itself.
Yeah, no, I like the Vader Cup. I think that's the idea. It kind of reminds me of like the Mets having Grimace be their mascot. It's like
There you go.
you're pulling something out of nothing to do like a promo thing.
Yeah.
And I think I'm kind of like with you. Like rivalries are fun and that's great, but it's not like the rivalries that I would want to have are like the ones with like Boston and New York. Like that's one where the
Yeah.
players get behind and they know when they go to play New York that that's important. The fans
Like
need you to win.
it's Mariners Astros.
Yes.
That's the rivalry. Like you can't change that unless it was the Mariners and the Padres year after year playing in the World Series and teams were going back and forth. There's no real history to it or actual passion behind the series itself. Whereas you're playing the Astros, that is one of the biggest series of the year. Like every time that you're playing them, those are extremely important games. And we'll see with all this realignment stuff how things shake out. But I think you're always going to have that rivalry between the Mariners and the Astros.
Yeah, and we'll get into that a little bit. We'll try and talk some division realignment, which I talked about on my show last week, but I definitely want to get your opinions about that as well. But then I also want to ask you the upcoming schedule for the Mariners. Um, It's looking a little tough. They play against the Guardians, who pretty good baseball team. Then they go and play against the Rays. They got you got the Braves in there as well, the Cardinals, then the Angels, and then you got the Kansas City Royals, the Astros, the Rockies, and the Dodgers. So, I mean, the Rockies are like the Rockies and Angels sprinkled in there are teams that's like you can totally beat them. But then there are some teams sprinkled in there like the Braves, the Astros, and the Dodgers, who I think are going to definitely give us some trouble. And this is in September. This is in the lead up to trying to win trying to hold on to that wild card spot or win the AL West. So, how kind of confident are you looking at this schedule that the Mariners might be able to get a playoff spot?
Yeah, I mean, I'm confident just because of the level that the Mariners are playing at. They can beat any team that that they're against, but this road trips obviously are tough. The last one that they're on was really rough. We'll see if they can face a Cleveland team that's up or if they're like leveled off a bit. I don't know if they've been doing great recently, but they do have a solid rotation and pitching staff. Then you have the Tampa Bay Rays, which is at their ballpark, which is basically like a minor league ballpark. It's the Yankees spring training complex, actually, which is the exact dimensions as Yankee Stadium. So we'll see if the ball's going to fly there. And then the Atlanta Braves are one of the shocking stories of this year of how bad they've been. I have Matt Olson and Ozzy Albies on my team, on my fantasy teams, and they've been going off the past few games. So hopefully we can catch them when they're a little cool. But I mean, I'm confident. And then you got the Cardinals coming into Seattle with the Angels for 4 games. That's a solid 7 game home set when they come back home. And then it's just a sprint to the finish. You got Royals, Astros, the Rockies, obviously, and then you finished off with the Dodgers. So looking at, if you go to tankathon.com, they actually break down the remaining strength of schedule remaining. And the Mariners have the 24th toughest schedule remaining. So out of all of the teams, they're potentially sixth easiest schedule remaining. So it's looking pretty good with the remaining opponents that they have. They just have to finish strong.
Yeah, is the with Tampa Bay? That's because of that the hurricane that came through.
Yeah, they don't
Tropicana.
have a stadium anymore.
So they're still playing in Florida, but it's the Yankees spring
Yeah,
training.
it's at the Yankees. Yep, Steinbrenner Field, I believe is what it's called. Yeah,
Interesting. I didn't really. It's
pretty
like it's
crazy.
the same thing with like the Athletics playing at the
Yeah,
Sacramento ballpark, which, from what I've
it's
heard
kind of
about that,
sad.
yeah. Well, from what I've heard about, so the minor league team is still playing there during the season, like when the A's aren't. So it's getting like
I'm pretty sure it's the Giants affiliate also.
yeah. So it's like they're getting like it's getting twice the wear and tear that a normal baseball field's supposed to get.
Oh man,
On top of that, it's like minor league facilities. So it's like
I've heard that the mound is terrible. I've heard pitchers
yeah.
complaining.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So I mean, I'm kind of glad. I'm pretty sure what they're going to be out of that by the end of this year. I think they're building their ballpark right now. Um, so that'll be good because I'm excited to see. It's going to be a brand new ballpark in Las Vegas, should be
I
pretty
think
fun.
that'll be like 2 or 3 years from now.
Oh, they'll be there for a few more years then.
Yeah, and then I saw that the A's are actually going to play in the AAA Las Vegas
Mm,
stadium for like a series or a couple series in July of next year, I believe. But yeah, I think they're going to be in Sacramento for the next like at least 2 years.
yeah, but no, definitely not the hardest schedule for the Mariners coming into September, but they do have an opportunity. This is a great chance to chase down the Astros, and if you can snag that number 1 spot and not have to play in the wild card, that would be super ideal.
Just for reference, the Astros have the 21st toughest, so they're 3 behind the Mariners as far as strength of schedule. They don't have a super hard schedule, but it's leaning towards an easier schedule for the Astros also.
Yeah. I also want to talk to you about Emerson Hancock getting recalled from AAA to help out in the bullpen. I was talking about it on my podcast with Bryce Miller that I thought, him coming off his rehab, if they were going to lean on him, I think they could have possibly transitioned him to a bullpen arm. They ended up not doing that. He's been mixed back into the fold of the starting rotation. He had a pretty good outing the other day. I can't remember who he started against,
Mhm.
but he had pretty good. He wasn't getting, hit around, which was fine. But they're going with this plan with Emerson Hancock, who he was like topping at 99 miles an hour, and you're going to have him
Yeah,
in the
that's
bullpen.
crazy.
That's like, and I think that my opinion on it is I think you have a game where teams are facing Logan Gilbert, Brian Wu, Luis Castillo, George Kirby, Bryce Miller, right, for 5 to 6 to 7 innings possibly. If Brian Wu's on the mound, it's going to be 7 innings.
Yeah.
And then you get done with that, you're like, okay, who am I going to face now? And it's Emerson Hancock. and then after that you have to face Munoz. So it's just like that's like a mentally like you can just break teams like that. So like I kind of want to get your thoughts on that, having Emerson Hancock in the bullpen.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how his stuff plays up because instead of having to try to go for 5 or 6 innings and, slowing down a little bit on your stuff and not going full intent, he's able to just let it eat for an inning and see where it goes. And the fact that he's approaching 100 and he's a sinker baller. So if you're at 99 with the sinker, he's going to be breaking some bats out of the bullpen, and he's likely not going to be a high leverage guy. He's probably going to be a guy that, if the Mariners are down by a run, down by two, or if they're up and it's the sixth inning and someone needs to come in and fill the space before you get to Spire and Brash and Munoz and all of those guys. And then also Caleb Ferguson has been great out of the bullpen, who was brought in at the deadline. But yeah, it's a great problem to have when you have to start moving starting pitchers to the bullpen because like they are so deep at that position. Logan Evans has been excelling out of the rotation for the time that he's been up in Seattle. Emerson Hancock was struggling a bit out of the rotation, so it makes sense for him to be the guy that's transitioned to the bullpen. See if his stuff can play up and help a bit. I thought honestly that Bryce Miller would be shut down at some point for the year just because the bone spur and things were not looking good. He was not having a feel of stuff, and it would really require offseason surgery to get that done. But he's back, and when he was rehabbing, he was averaging like 96.7 or something on his fastball. So if he could stay healthy, the rest of the rotation is solid. Obviously, Brian Wu is an ace this year. I think a big key also is Logan Gilbert, him being able to get deeper into games, and taking some pressure off this bullpen if these guys can go deeper.
Yeah, we have about my free subscription to Zoom has this meeting only about 6 minutes 30 seconds left. So we got a couple things we want to talk about. We'll see if we can get
Okay.
into them. But no, I mean no rush to you. One of the other things I wanted to ask you about, and we kind of prefaced it at the start, I think maybe before we were recording, Cal versus Aaron Judge for the AL MVP. Um, do you think that Cal will be the MVP? Or do you think that Aaron Judge is gonna, with the kind of year that he's having, do you think they're gonna give it to Judge, which would be what, his third MVP, I think?
Yeah, it's tough. I do think that it's leaning towards Cal just because the national spotlight is finally talking about Cal, whereas in years past he wasn't. Like I started my player profile series a few years ago in 2022, talking. My first video was about Cal because of the special stuff that he was doing, and now he's just taking it to a whole nother level. But yeah, as we talked about off air, there's certainly an East Coast bias and a big market bias. Seattle is kind of an afterthought, but with the spotlight that has been put on Cal this year. And you just look at objectively, okay, a right fielder who is now just a DH, Aaron Judge. Obviously, he's putting up stupid numbers at the plate, and he does every year. But the value that Cal brings to this team with being behind the dish, catching really 4 or 5 days a week now, DHing the other days, but he's able to bring the rotation and the entire pitching staff up to the level that they've been the past couple of years because of his pitch calling, his framing ability, throwing out runners, all that stuff. He's stealing bases even, and he's doing stuff that catchers haven't ever done in history now. So I think if he can find a hot streak and keep it up the rest of the year, he has a legit chance. Even if Judge's offensive stats are slightly outweighing what Cal is doing, I think his overall value to the Mariners team might you could argue is more than the total value that Judge is bringing to the Yankees with the rest of the roster that they have too.
Yeah, I definitely think that kind of what you were mentioning, like, yes, Aaron Judge is having a crazy year at the plate. Like the stats, like that's the thing. Like Yankees fans keep bringing up, it's like, whoa, but the batting average, oh, but the OPS. Um, yes, those are really great numbers, but Cal is like he's not that far behind him. At least, I mean,
Yeah,
for OPS, he's what Judge is like almost around 1,200 or something like that, and Cal's 900 plus, which is, I mean, 900 plus is still incredibly like that's great.
yeah,
And I think that yes, Aaron Judge is having a great year at the plate and he's got great batting stats. But I think the fact, like what you're mentioning, that he's a right fielder who's now basically a DH in
yeah.
comparison to a catcher who, like, I played
The
baseball. I was going,
toughest position on the field.
yeah, I was an outfielder because I was a lefty, so I was an outfielder. I was a first baseman and I pitched, right? I have no shame in admitting that catcher is the hardest position and it's
Oh, absolutely.
way, way harder than the outfield. And Judge isn't even playing in the outfield that much, to be honest. So I think you factor in the fact that he has more home runs than Judge, more RBIs than Judge, is like nipping at his heels for batting average and OPS. On top of playing, you basically you mentioned all this before, but it
Also, Judge is in Yankee Stadium.
yes.
Cal Raleigh's is in one of the most pitcher friendly ballparks, and he's still doing what he's doing.
Yeah, I wrote an article for the Daily Evergreen back at the start of July, kind of breaking down why I thought that Cal should be the MVP. That was like super early to write that, but a lot of the points I made in that
Good
article are
foresight.
I mean, a lot of the points I make in that article are still hold true today. You know, harder position. He's neck and neck with him with a lot of those stats. He's playing in a harder ballpark with the Marine Lair on a worser team when you think about it. The Yankees on paper, the Yankees should be a better team than they are. They have stars like Cody Bellinger, Goldschmidt, um, Jazz Chisholm, Carlos Stanton. Like these are guys who on top of Judge, he is not necessarily the most valuable player on that team. When you think of
Right.
Mariners, Cal is the most valuable guy on that.
Cal is pulling the he's leading the charge for the team.
Yeah. Do you think?
We wish that Julio could be consistent at what he could be the entire year, but he's up and down. But Cal has been carrying the team.
Yeah. Do you think? And we kind of mentioned it before. I think that East Coast bias, but you said too, like he's starting to get some more media attention. Do you think that?
Oh, for sure.
Do you think that the writers are the ones who vote for the AL MVP? Do you think that he gets enough attention to get the AL MVP votes?
I think the Mariners have to make the playoffs for him to win the MVP. If they don't make the playoffs, then Cal's out of it. If they make the playoffs, then there's a strong argument that Cal is the reason for the Mariners making the playoffs. Especially in years past, the Mariners had one of, if not the best rotations in baseball. Their rotation as a whole has been underperforming this year, and yet the offense has been there to pull the team up and get them to where they are today. Obviously, 1 through 9, the lineup for the Mariners, they're all above league average hitters now when you're looking at weighted runs created plus. But I think certainly the Mariners have to make the playoffs, but I think Cal has a great shot at winning the MVP this year.
So unfortunately, I mentioned it in the recording that my free subscription to Zoom kicks you out after about 40-ish minutes. So we were able to get back on another call, and I was able to get another interview. So I'm gonna cue that up real quick for you guys. As the last little thing we talked about with the Couch GM is division realignment with the MLB. So we're gonna get into that real quick. Don't go away. I'm gonna bring that up in just a few seconds. And we're going to send it right back to Smith back on Thursday, talking with the Couch GM, talking Mariners division realignment. Welcome back, everybody. We are still here with Connor Webb after some technical difficulties, and we are going to finish up this segment talking about the thing we prefaced it before, talking about the MLB potential realignment, which the Commissioner of Baseball was on the Mariners broadcast for the Little League Classic, and kind of hinted at the fact that there's going to be some potential division realignment. I mean, I think that's pretty exciting. I do think it's weird that the Mariners play in a division with two teams from Texas and then also teams from California, which like in terms if it's supposed to be like a division, like you feel
Yeah.
like it's supposed to be, he mentioned it basically being a geographic realignment. I was wanting to get your thoughts about it, and I know a lot of people have been posting stuff talking about here's my predicted realignment for the AL West, here's my predicted realignment for the East Coast. Um, what's kind of your thoughts on this, and what potential realignments do you possibly want to see with the Mariners?
Yeah, well, I think expansion is really exciting, and I think Rob Manfred, that's his last big thing that he wants to get done before he retires. And with the CBA being done after this next year, after 2026, I think that's the time frame that they're really going to push for the expansion. We'll see if there's a lockout after the 2026 season and what that looks like, but I think that's when the expansion will be started and announced and on the actual cities. I think it's really exciting. I mean, that's also one potential drawback of a free agent signing with the Mariners is because they travel more than any team in baseball. So if they're able to realign to other teams that are closer to them location wise, then that helps their overall travel throughout the season. I do think it's cool that every team plays every team now, which wasn't happening in the past, and I think that needs to stay. But yeah, we'll see which cities. I'm 20, 30 minutes from downtown Portland right now. And so ideally Portland can get a baseball team. The other big team or the big city that fans want a team to go to is Nashville. There's also Charlotte. You also have to figure out the Tampa Bay situation. There's obviously the A's are going to Vegas. There's there's Salt Lake City that's making a big push to compete with Portland, and we'll just have to kind of see where things fall in line. There's a lot of cities that are trying to get an MLB team. So yeah, the assumption is that there will be two in the expansion. I hope that Portland gets a team, and then you could have the I-5 rivalry between the Mariners and the Portland team, which is much more of a rivalry than the Mariners and the Padres, as we talked about before. And then if you realign to where it's the Mariners, the Portland team, the Bay Area teams, so like you go the Giants, you go Vegas, maybe then at that point, or down to LA. I think it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, I definitely think that Nashville expansion team might be probably at the top of a lot of people's lists. I think that's definitely the one they're probably going to get. As much as you're right. It would be so cool to have a Portland MLB team because exactly what you're saying. The rivalry potential there is like huge. Like that would
Yeah.
be awesome. Like it's an I-5 rivalry. That's super fun. Um, and there is a market for baseball in Portland. You think of the Portland Pickles, for example. Like there's that market for it, but then that's the question is like the Portland Pickles, they're the college collegiate summer team,
Yep.
I believe. So it's like it's baseball, but and I think that they kind of toe the line between being there's somewhere between like professional baseball and like the Savannah Bananas in terms of
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
the kind of goofiness. And so then that's like where people look at it like is it a market for baseball or is it a market for like entertainment kind of thing? And that's where I think that Nashville probably has maybe more of that market for baseball. Um, I also think that they're probably a bigger market than Portland is, unfortunately. So it's like I if you were to ask me, I think you would probably go Nashville's going to get an expansion team, and I think that Canada, one of a Canadian team,
Montreal.
Montreal would be bring back the Expos. I mean, like that's they need another baseball team because I think it's like I would be it would be imagine if like for hockey there was only one hockey team in the United States and it was like the Detroit Red Wings and that was it. And so you could only if you were an American hockey fan you could only root for the Detroit Red Wings. That would suck. And
Vancouver could be interesting too.
that's where I think Vancouver would be super fun because it's the same thing. It's not instead of it being down south, it'll be up north for us to go up and play against them in
Yeah.
Vancouver. Yeah.
You have
So I
all the
think
Blue Jays fans that come down to the Mariners Blue Jays series every year.
yeah. And so there's definitely a market for baseball in Canada. I think Canada kind of gets like not pigeonholed into being like they're a hockey country, but like they have like huge baseball. Like um there's were some guys on the Cougar baseball team who kind of worked their way up through. They grew up in Canada. Gavin Roy, our shortstop right now, is a great example. He's from Sudbury, Ontario. Like he worked his way all the way up through the Ontario Baseball League and everything. So there's a market for baseball all
Yeah.
throughout Canada. So I think they kind of if there's a place I think that really deserves a team, I feel like it would be Canada because they've kind of making do with only one baseball team for and they're a huge country. So it's like that's kind of my 2 cents where I would say like give it to either like Montreal, for example, or Vancouver because those are two like cities that could severely benefit from a baseball team. I think that would be super fun to see.
Yeah, we'll have to see how the things play out. That's interesting. The thought is that there would be one on the west side, one on the east side. So I guess west side, yeah, that would be Vancouver, and then like between, it seems like it's Portland and Salt Lake City on the west side, and then you got the east, which would be like Nashville, Charlotte, maybe Montreal. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun to see. Hopefully they announce it sometime soon.
Yeah, and I think with the potential geographic realignment, for the Mariners at least, I've been seeing a lot of people drawing their kind of maps of how they think that it should shake out, and some of them I've seen have us in the same division as the Rockies, which not that I wouldn't want to have the Rockies in the same division as us, but it's just that it doesn't make sense geographically for us to like for a team in Denver to be in like I think if you are purely doing geographically, it would be the Mariners, it would be the Giants, it would be the Angels, the possibly the the Padres and then possibly the Dodgers. It would just go straight down that West Coast.
It can make
I was
sense. Yeah.
I was gonna say the Athletics, but they're in Vegas now, so I think they're probably gonna
Mhm.
get roped into the division with the Rockies, Arizona, maybe
Yeah,
the
that makes
Texas
sense.
teams. But and I also I just don't. There's the Rockies have no place in a Western aligned division. They are probably going to be like a Rocky
They're in the
Mountain.
Mountain Time Zone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just doesn't really quite make sense. But I think I would be worried to play in a division though that's aligned like that to go Mariners, Giants, who are they haven't been as good this year. They started out pretty hot and they've cooled off significantly. Um, Angels I'm not worried about, but the Padres and Dodgers
Oh
would
yeah.
scare me if they were division
Yeah,
opponents. Like that would be a
for sure.
tough
That'd be
matchup.
a tough division.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would be kind of your ideal realignment for the Mariners?
Yeah, I would say Mariners, either Portland or Vancouver team, whichever that is, or yeah, I guess Salt Lake City's kind of in the mix there. But then, yeah, as you described, the Giants in the Bay Area makes a lot of sense. And then, yeah, working your way down, it's just a matter of like how many teams are going to be in each division, whether it's four or five. So the top four would be like Mariners, Portland, Giants, and then if you're down at LA at that point, you hope it's the Angels. You hope it's not the Dodgers. But then the Padres are also like, you know, an hour drive south of there or 10-minute flight. So it's kind of indifferent between all those teams for the fourth spot.
Yeah. All I know is I kind of want to. I'm torn. I want to get out of a division with the Rangers and the Astros because I think that's we've the AL West. It feels like the AL West has gotten a little stale playing against those teams over and over again. I think it would be cool to kind of revamp it and get new
Hmm.
division opponents. Um, but and it also doesn't. It just never really made sense to me. Never really clicked why it was like, why are we playing against teams in Texas and we're the
Yeah.
AL West and they're like perfectly like in the center of the country.
Yeah, that doesn't make too much sense.
It was and it's um the other thing too I wanted to ask you is I think some division realignments don't have AL or NL anymore. Do you think if they're going to realign, should they keep the AL NL system, or do you think they scrap that and kind of start from scratch?
Yeah, I think you kind of have to start from scratch at that point because like the big difference between the AL and the NL before was that there was, pitchers were hitting in the NL, whereas in the AL they weren't. Now there's absolutely no difference between the two leagues. So I think it would make sense for them to make something completely different. It's always weird, going from something that is known and to something that's been there for a while to something new. But I think that does make sense for them to go away from that model.
Do you think that the kind of old system of having pitchers hits. So that was the NL, correct? The NL wouldn't didn't allow
Yeah.
DH. Do you think they should go back to that potentially, maybe just for like one
No.
division or something like that? You don't think so?
No, I mean, seeing pitchers try to lay down a bunt versus having a DH there to be able to do some damage. I mean, you're just putting, you know, pitchers are always like pitchers are athletes too, but I mean, when you're at the plate trying to face 95 plus with movement, I mean, you're just putting your pitchers in a bad spot there.
I mean, I talked to a lot of fans, and my dad's one of these guys where it's like he views like the modern baseball players like they're soft, and I'm like, what do you mean? It's like it used to be like if you were a pitcher, you'd go CG like constantly, like Greg Maddux going every single like all 9 innings all the way through. If you're a pitcher, you hit as well. So like you think of like John Olrue on the Cougs, for example, two-way player,
Yeah,
or like
insane.
or like Shohei, for example, right now he's doing it because he's a freak of nature, but he kind of always points back to like the older days of baseball where he was like, it used to be that you were expected if you were a pitcher, you got to be able to go up and hit and maybe not be the best, but you
Yeah.
got to like you fill out one of those spots on the roster like hitting wise. Um,
I mean, like
I
Max Scherzer was practicing bunts pregame and he takes one off the face and now he's got a black eye.
Yeah, that's the problem that I kind of bring up to a lot of people is like, and I think you were just talking about too, is it's like you put your pitchers in spots where it's like one they can get hurt, two, it's they're not then they have to focus on two things at once, and it's like you're not every pitcher isn't going to be like Shohei where they can pitch at a high level and can hit at the high level. Like this is not
He is the one player in history that is doing what he's doing. Like
yeah.
there's Babe Ruth and all that stuff, but he's the best player that we'll ever see.
Yeah. And so I don't think I don't think they'll ever do it. I think it would be an interesting like I wonder if you could like experiment with it. I just think it's fun to see like Bartol Colon like hit a home run. Like that was like it's
Or
like
Felix hitting a grand slam. I mean, yeah,
yeah,
those moments are sweet, but when they're batting 100, how often is that happening?
exactly. Yeah. No, Connor, uh, I gotta let you go. But look, it has been absolutely amazing talking Cougs Mariners baseball with you. We're here with Connor Webb. If you're just tuning in, co-host of the Couch GM podcast. If you're not following them on YouTube, Instagram, wherever you're getting sports content, go do that now. If you want to get plugged into the Mariners Cougs sports world, he's the guy to be following. He's got incredible content. About 12,000 subscribers on YouTube, so we're gonna want to keep that growing too. So Connor, any last words before we close out this interview?
No, really appreciate it. Thank you, Smith, for having me on. And yeah, really exciting for the Cougs season this year. The Hawks are going to be interesting. The Mariners are right in it. So yeah, again, thank you for having me on, and looking forward to how things pan out.
Absolutely. So that'll do it for this interview. We'll send it back to Smith in the studio. Smith, take it away.
That was an absolutely amazing conversation I got to have with the Couch GM podcast co-host Connor Webb. I think I mentioned it before at the very end there. If you're not following him on social media, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you're getting your sports content, go follow him. If you want to get plugged into Mariners content and Cougs content too, he's kind of the go-to place for that. So he's a super great guy. I'm super lucky to have gotten to talk to him. But hey, we're going to change some gears. Our last segment of the day, we're talking Seahawks, and we're talking it with the one and only great Seahawks fan, Connor Seuferling. How are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Glad to be the second Connor on the podcast today.
Yeah, he's the managing editor for the Daily Evergreen here, so he's technically my boss. So
it doesn't really count, but it's good times over there.
yeah, we put boss in quotation marks basically.
Big quotation marks.
Yeah, but no, dude, I'm excited to have you on. It's been quite a while since you've been on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I had Marty Tenney and I had Gage Anderson, who also writes for the Daily Evergreen on. So dude, I'm excited. So for the Seahawks, let's talk. We're gonna do our kind of top 5 most intriguing Seahawks coming out preseason. They played their last preseason game against the Green Bay Packers. We're not gonna talk about that game because it was just not a good game.
It was not a good game, and just don't talk about it. We don't need to get into the details. It's a preseason game. Jalen Milroe he didn't look good out there. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah.
That's why we're saving him from the run pass option game. We're saving him for those QB draws, maybe some tush pushes in there. So it was an experiment. It was an experiment for a reason. So yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, no, it was a little frustrating in that game because I remember tuning in and we have all of our backups plus Jalen Milroe in,
Mm-hmm.
and Green Bay kind of had some of their starters out, and so it was kind of I felt really bad for Milroe because it's just he's throwing the guys who are probably not going to be making the starting roster. I mean that game was also tragic because Jake Bobo had a concussion there, which we weren't watching the game, but we heard about that because we were at a meeting with the Daily Evergreen, and I remember everyone in the sports section was just like, Jake Bobo's injured, the season's over. No, our wide receiver 1 is out for the year, which was brutal.
We love Jake Bobo. That's kind of the joke around here.
Yeah.
This guy last year took Jake Bobo in the first round of our fantasy draft. First time, but also one of the most troll picks I've ever seen.
Look, I have faith in Jake Bobo every now and then, and you never know, maybe you can put him in a trade package. Even though I don't think I traded him at all the year. He kind of just rode
You
my
ended up
bench.
being okay.
That's the thing. I got an F rating on my fantasy pick that year, and I ended up doing okay. I think I was middle of the pack, I think, or something like that. Yeah.
So that tells you can mess up your first pick and you're still in business.
It's typically the guys who get the F grade on their draft that end up either being middle of the pack or they end up winning the whole thing because it's the algorithm can't take into account who's going to get hurt, who's going to have an off year, who's going to get cold, and who's going to have a standout year. Because it's not every single year there's going to be some guy who you weren't thinking you were going to be talking about, and then all of a sudden you're talking about him.
Yeah, the AI can't account for the breakout guys. Every guy's got their sleeper. Who's the guy from Washington right now? I don't know his name. Merritt, I think his last name is Krosky Merritt.
Yeah.
For the longest time, he was 12th, 13th round on everybody's boards. Now he's climbed up to ADP around 8th round.
Yeah.
And it's those guys you never know. But if somebody hits on them, then you're like, holy cow! For me, I'm wanting to wait on Drake May as my quarterback in a lot of leagues, and I feel good about him. But it's completely possible that the Pats are just suck again. You know. So
exactly. And you want to talk about another bad first round pick? I did our we did our fantasy draft for a different league I'm in, and I was doing something though when the draft was happening, so I knew like, okay, I'm gonna queue up a bunch of guys and then try and check in every now and then, make sure to see if my pick comes up. And I queued up Ashton Genty kind of by mistake because I was just like, he was popping in my head. I was like, okay, I'll put him on, but I don't know if he's gonna be my number one. But I ended up accidentally, because I queued him up and I missed my pick, I ended up drafting Ashton Genty first round, which is such a it's not a dynasty. It wasn't a dynasty.
Okay,
it's normal, regular fantasy football. So I have Ashton Genty on my team, which I mean, I've kind of been a bit of an Ashton Genty hater, where I think he's not going to be that good. At least maybe his first year or first couple years, maybe. But who knows? Maybe he just like completely balls out this year on the Raiders, and that was like a goated first pick.
Yeah, because to me, I'm like, I'm happy about getting a Genty in the first round.
Yeah.
Now it depends on your spot. You know, if you're picking last in the round, then you're happy.
Yeah.
But if you're picking 7 or 8 or even 5 or 6,
I was the 7th pick.
You're the 7th pick. Okay, well then I'm not feeling great about that. Because you got so many good wide receivers right there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd even rather take like Derrick Henry that high than Ashton Genty. You know, or Saquon.
Yeah, I got Drake London. I got Josh Allen.
Okay, good.
Which looks like I queued those guys up. I might have gotten Derrick Henry. No, I think someone else got Derrick Henry. All I know is like after the draft was done, I was looking at like because I was doing something right in the middle of it, so I ended up making like none of my picks when my pick was happening.
That happens.
And I looked, and my team was actually pretty decent. I was
good.
Like, okay, I'm actually happy with this. Like
auto picking gives you a solid floor.
Yeah.
I hate to say it because I'm one of those guys that like hates auto picking.
Yeah.
I was doing a draft while I was watching. What were we watching last night? Whatever games were. Oh, we were watching Mariners last night, and then we had a couple of we had the Boise State game on.
Yeah.
And all that, which that was atrocious.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was drafting, and then I was cooking, and then one of my picks I had to auto draft, and I got Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want Brock Purdy as my freaking quarterback. Like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Like, he's a 49er. I don't like him.
Yeah.
Nobody in the state of Washington should like Brock Purdy.
Okay, here's the thing. I don't like the 49ers either, but something about Brock Purdy speaks to me. I like the guy, Mr. Irrelevant. He was the last overall pick.
Yeah, Iowa State product, last pick.
There is something to me about the Mr. Irrelevant, that storyline, a guy like that who was never supposed to, be like as good as he was.
Yeah.
End up going to the Super Bowl, battling out against Patrick Mahomes. So I like Brock Purdy, but I don't like the 49ers, obviously. Like I know we agree on that, but like, I like Brock Purdy as a quarterback, as a person. Like that's my kind of opinion.
I can see where you're coming from. Yeah, I mean sometimes he does get too much hate from people. That's totally fair. And like he's definitely an above average quarterback more often than not. You could on his best day he's borderline top 10 quarterback, but at least in fantasy, like he's not a guy who runs. He doesn't throw enough for me either. Like I don't know.
I mean, I'll admit that he's not the best quarterback. I think that like people were saying like he's a system quarterback, and I agree. I don't think like if you put him on a not so great team with not so great pieces, he would not have done what he did with the 49ers.
Right.
It helps that he has Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, like these really good players around him.
Yeah.
But so I definitely think that like in terms of like skill, he's not the best quarterback. I'll give you that, but it's like, but I just the storyline to me is like, he's a lovable guy where it's like, I want to see this guy like succeed, but maybe just not on the 49ers.
Yeah, he's a classic farm boy. I've seen those clips of him out in the wheat fields with his combine.
Yep.
He's a nice guy from Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
Cornfields, wheat fields.
Yeah.
Yeah, I rock with that, especially because we're in the Palouse. But
exactly.
Yeah, I'm still not happy about that pick. So.
Yeah. But anyway, we digress. Let's get into our top 5 most intriguing Seahawks coming out of preseason. Look, I'm going to kick it off, and I'm going to go with my number 5, fifth most intriguing Seahawk. I'm going to say Zach Charbonnet.
Ooh,
and I'm going to say that because I don't think he's made, some big strides from last year in terms of being better. It's hard to do that because last year was really good for him. As basically our backup running back, which I hesitate to say he was a backup running back. He was kind of just like our number 2.
Right.
I think he's made such huge, I don't think he's improved that much, but he's showing that he's going to be about the same as he was last year, and that's awesome because he was a good backup for when K9 got hurt and could come in and produce. So because he hasn't made that much improvement, I'm putting him at number 5, but he makes the number 5 because I think he's going to be a great backup because, I mean, it's kind of inevitable that K9 is going to get hurt. Mm-hmm. So having him as that kind of backup to help us kind of win games is going to be huge for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are overreacting a little bit. Like, especially when you get into like fantasy conversations, people are like, "Oh my gosh, Zach Charbonnet is like one of the best handcuffs in the league because they might even be a split back committee." And I'm like, it's definitely possible. And I'm more of a Charbonnet fan than I am a K9 fan. one with injuries, and two, I just sometimes K9 gets on my nerves, and he feels like such an inefficient runner. Sometimes he scampers for a 50-yard run. Other times it's like he gets stuffed 4 times in a row.
Yeah.
And that's partially offensive line problems, but still, I'm not a big K9 guy. And so I do hope that at a certain point we start considering kind of going more by committee. And Charbonnet has a little bit of advantage. I think K9 was struggling with some hamstring stuff during camp.
Yeah,
I could be wrong, but I swear I remember just him having some off days, whereas Charbonnet's been there consistently in camp at the facility every single day. So I like that pick. I'm feeling good. I think he's one of the best backup running backs in the NFL. And I mean, if you at there's probably 5 to 10 other teams that would take him as a starter, and he could probably start today and be a good running back. So I like that pick. For me, my number 5 guy, I was just kind of looking through the depth chart this morning, just kind of, get myself back in the swing of things for the Seahawks. And I remember Nick Emenwari. He was our first round pick, safety out of South Carolina. Go Gamecocks, by the way. And I love his range. He's a prototypical Mike McDonald, even Pete Carroll defensive kind of guy. Great tackler. Loves to roam around the field. He's not necessarily one of those center field guys that you got with a guy like Earl Thomas back in the day, but I feel really good about him. And I wouldn't say he's like stood out a ton in camp, but I mean he's longer than all 3 of our other main safeties that made the roster. Kobe Bryant's still going to start. Julian Love's still going to start. Those are going to be the main 2 guys. But when you get into nickel packages, when you get into opportunities where we need a nickel safe, nickel corner, extra safety type stuff, I love Nick Emenwari. I feel really good about this guy. And maybe he can have kind of a similar season with Devon Witherspoon and Reek Woolen having in their rookie years. And so, I mean, that's my number 5 guy.
I like it. I like the number 5 pick. I think it's definitely hard for him to kind of stand out on this defense because of how good this defense is. So, like when people are like, "Oh, he might not have stood out that much in camp." Well, he's around guys who are like, not saying that they're significantly better than him, but they're more developed than him. We have one of the best defenses in the league, if you ask me.
Yeah.
I think I've kind of mentioned it before. I think that's part of the reason why the Seahawks have been like severely underrated coming into this season because defense does not get nearly enough attention. So yeah, I think that's a super solid number 5 pick. Like I think that we're going to develop him if he's on a good. That's the thing. Like if you're a good defensive player, but you get drafted to a team with a horrible defense because they need defense, who's going to develop you? A really poor defense with not that great guys who aren't. I mean, they might be good veteran presences, but they're not going to be like they're not going to lead by example the way that this like new defense.
Very true.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go for my number 4 pick. Look, I'm gonna go. Maybe shocks some people, but I'm gonna go Sam Darnold.
Okay.
I know he didn't play that much in preseason, but I'm gonna put him at number 4 because I've heard a lot of people mention this, and I 1,000% agree with it. The Seahawks season rests on the shoulders of Sam Darnold.
It does.
Because Mike McDonald has not wavered. It's like the opposite from the Cougs. Mike McDonald has not wavered from the fact that Sam Darnold is going to be our starting QB. So, is he going to be able to do what he did with Minnesota last year for the Seahawks? We don't know. He was an okay backup for much of his career. Goes to Minnesota, balls out, comes to the Seahawks. We know it's not going to be Drew Lock. It's not going to be Jalen Milroe who's going to get the rock on opening day against the 49ers. So if he has a good year, we could potentially make playoffs. If he has a bad year, we are not going to be making playoffs. It's just not going to be that good of a year for the Seahawks. So that's why I put him at number 4, not necessarily from what I've seen in preseason, but just because so much rides on him having a good year for the Seahawks to be able to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, he looked good in the preseason game too. Completed a lot of passes, very efficient with the ball. I like his connection with JSN so far. I've heard a lot of good things out of camp of those two, especially in the Green Bay joint practice. I heard some good things about those two just consistently getting the ball to him early and often. I really like that. And so, yeah, I mean, I definitely think, sometimes as boring as it can seem to make the quarterback one of your intriguing picks, at the same time, like you really have to, because we're kind of in a big year for the Seahawks. Like I wouldn't call it make or break for anybody necessarily, but if Sam Darnold succeeds, he's got maybe a future more long-term future in the NFL than some may have thought just 2 years ago. But if he sucks, I don't know. He legit might be relegated to a backup role by 2026. And so there's a lot to consider here. Yeah. Okay, my number 4. Yeah, we got to get into that. My number 4, I am going to ride on your shoulders from your number 5. I'm going to go to Zach Charbonnet.
All right.
Not too much to add on the guy. Again, I am really hoping that we utilize his ability. I feel confident about his ability in the pass game. I know that's maybe not his strong suit all the time, but I feel good about his ability there. He works hard. I feel like he can be a 3-down back in the NFL if we really want him to be. And so, yeah, I mean, I've liked what I've heard out of camp so far from Charbonnet, and I mean, again, kind of back to the fantasy thing. Like, I mean, I love him as one of my favorite late round picks in fantasy drafts, and that's for a specific reason because we all know that K9's going to have issues. And I mean, I would love for K9 to have a full season of success where it's, you know, maybe he misses 1 or 2 games and that's it, and rides out another 1,000-yard rushing season. But I don't know. My gut's telling me it's another 850, 800-yard season, plays like 12, 13 games, maybe 10. I don't know.
Yeah. I was talking with someone about it when we were talking about fantasy football and drafted in K9. They said, and this is a phenomenal, it's a great point, and I agree with them fully. If you draft K9 for your fantasy football team, do you know who else you have to draft with them?
Zach Charbonnet.
Zach Charbonnet.
They come together.
Package. It's a package deal. Yeah, because like you're saying, like we hope that K9 is going to have a healthy season where he doesn't get hurt, but knowing K9 and his track record, he's probably going to get hurt. So,
it's so true.
Yeah, so because of that. It's such a smart move to draft both K9 and Zach Charbonnet because when K9 inevitably gets hurt, you can get Zach Charbonnet, who's also going to put up probably pretty close to the same numbers that K9's going to put up.
Yeah.
So that way you kind of get around one of the main things that kills fantasy teams is those injuries. Like you draft a guy and then your backup is like, you know, your backup's like just a warm body that they can throw the ball to. They're not that talented, right?
Right.
You get that's like your way late round picks where it's like I just need a backup for my running back. I just need a backup for wide receiver or QB. So it's like, you know, just throw in this random guy. But if you get both K9 and Zach Charbonnet, and Zach Charbonnet could totally fall in a lot of drafts because people underrate him so much.
Yeah.
That I think that giving them as a package deal is 1,000% possible for a lot of different people in their fantasy team.
Yeah, it's a good strategy. Legit. I mean, I totally agree with you on that.
Got you. Looking at my number 3 pick, I'm going to have to go Torrey Horton. He impressed me during the preseason. He's had a couple games, I think especially against the Kansas City Chiefs and the Raiders where he's just looking really, really good. I mean, especially with the gap that DK kind of left in the wide receiver room. Yeah. There's been those kind of holes. And, you know, love JSN. I feel bad for JSN because he's lost a lot of the pieces that were around him.
It's tough.
Yeah. Love Jake Bobo, but he's not going to be one of those, like, starting wide receivers for us, most likely. So then that's the debate between whether or not you're going to go with, you know, Torrey Horton or some of the other guys. I think Torrey Horton should win that spot. He's kind of a weird looking guy. He looks like almost like a basketball player. He's tall and he's lanky. He's kind of skinny. He looks like he would get just rocked if he got hit.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But he's just super athletic. So he's been kind of very intriguing to me watching preseason, and I think that he could totally be potentially a standout guy this year if he gets that starting spot.
Yeah, I totally agree. He's kind of an older rookie, 22 out of CSU, but I've loved what I've seen from him as well. I really like getting another young guy in this rotation. I don't know. I think this group has so much potential. So to get a guy who's taller and can kind of complement both Cooper Kupp and JSN, both guys who I feel like thrive kind of in either in the slot or in the middle of the field. Not necessarily guys you're going to be sending deep balls to. And I mean, I don't totally know enough about Torrey's top speed, you know, and how fast he gets out of the gate on the line of scrimmage, but I don't know. I have a good feeling about him, and I think it provides such a diverse option for Sam Darnold. So, yeah. And then moving on to my number 3, I'm going to go back to the defense, I think, and I am going to go with Byron Murphy II, our first-round pick from last year out of Texas.
Nice.
I mean, obviously, anytime you get a guy out of Texas, you're going to feel good. That's a program that has produced so many good players over the last few years on both sides of the ball. A lot of good products out on the defensive side as well. And last year was a little rough. You know, it was for a guy who was the 16th pick, a little bit of an underwhelming first season. I believe it was only half a sack on the entire season, which, I mean, sacks aren't the most important stat by all means. There's more important things like pass rush win rate and stuff like that. But that still tells a tale. It's like he wasn't as impactful as we want him to be. But I don't know. He's slotted in to be on that kind of start on that defensive line again, I believe. He's going to get a lot of snaps, a lot of opportunities. And, I mean, McDonald's known for getting guys to show out in their second year. He's worked with a young defense in Baltimore before. I think he's got so much potential, just regardless of his execution last year, because that was probably his biggest issue, was execution, finishing on the quarterback, getting to the quarterback. But I don't think there was issues necessarily with getting pressures, with being a technical guy. I think he has all the physical tools to make it happen. He's big, he's strong. I mean, this is a guy who I think is poised for a second-year breakout, and coach has talked about it too. And I think he really likes him on that front line. So this is a guy who I really think could break out in a second year.
Yeah, and I even think that the defense last year for the Cougs, the defense last year for the Seahawks wasn't even to their ceiling. Like there were a couple games last year where the defense wasn't looking that hot, and like some guys who didn't have as good of years as they had the year before. And so I think that when you've added like Eamon Worry, when you have Murphy, like you have these pieces now. I think this year where we're going to be significantly better. I also kind of want to ask your opinion on, like, I think DK coined the nickname. They tried kind of unsuccessfully to nickname the defense. I think it was the Death Zone or something like that, which is like it's like trying to be like Legion of Boom 2.0. Which I don't know about you, but there's no way. Like I don't think the Legion of Boom is ever going to exist again. That kind of dominant defense. Yeah. Right. And especially, so I feel like they were kind of trying to force a nickname on there. Like, so what are you thinking about the Death Zone as that kind of nickname?
It's corny, man.
Yeah.
Like, baseball, like being in the no-fly zone out in the outfield, like that's nice. That sounds good. Death Zone, I don't know. It feels so corny. Yeah. It's trying to be violent. Whereas like the Legion of Boom is so unique. Nobody thinks, like, first of all, Legion is not a popular name you use to describe a group of guys. You use squad, you use team, you use roster, those things like that. And then also, like, just boom, like that carries such a kind of unique sentiment, and it ended up being great for branding and for creating a team identity. And I agree, that's not coming back. I mean, or at least not anytime soon. It takes because I think the Legion of Boom, it doesn't, like, even if our defense, like, statistically wise, is as good as that team, the Legion of Boom era guys, I still don't think that makes us the Legion of Boom, because there's a specific play style that comes with it. And I'm not saying that the way that Pete Carroll taught his corners to tackle and his guys to be physical is gone, because again, Coach McDonald's going to bring that in as well. But it's a different style of defense. It's not the Pete Carroll defense, and I think that makes such a big difference. Yeah,
absolutely. Let's move up real quick to my pick number 2. I'm going to go, I mean, this might upset some Seahawks fans, but I'm going to go Jalen Milroe number 2.
Okay.
So, I've got 2 QBs on my top 5 most intriguing Seahawks list. I think when I get down to it, I think I have all offensive players in my top 5. But that's mainly just because I feel like I kind of have faith in this defense. I kind of want this. I need this offense needs to be really good this year for the Seahawks if they want to.
I mean, that's our strength too. That's what we know best as guys, and like, I mean, the offense is, like you said, kind of where it's going to be make or break this year.
Absolutely. But I'm going to go Jalen Milroe because, look, I know people are going to probably be clowning me and just be saying like, well, what about that Green Bay game? You didn't do that good in that Green Bay game. It's like, well, that's one preseason game. He balled out pretty well in that Raiders game and in that Kansas City game. He's very mobile, and I mean, do I say most intriguing for maybe this year? Probably not. I think most intriguing because he's got, I think, what it takes to develop over this year, maybe over next year, and then become possibly the future for that QB room. Because I don't see necessarily the longest future with Drew Lock, because, I mean, it's Drew Lock at the end of the day. Love Drew Lock. Great guy, great personality, beat the Eagles, but he's not going to be the future of this quarterback room.
Nope, unfortunately not.
Unfortunately not. Sam Darnold could be, like we mentioned it before, that like it could be that like if he has a really great year with the Seahawks and is proving that like, hey, he's really like he's revived himself, then maybe he could be potentially for the next few years be like the guy who we're handing the rock to every single game. But I think looking past Sam Darnold, it's going to be Jalen Milroe, and so whether they use him at all this year for maybe a few games, like maybe they have certain plays drawn up for him, can't quite tell yet. After the first couple of games, if he comes in and starts like having some reps on some plays as being that kind of mobile QB, we'll see. So I think the number one question mark is if they're going to develop that arm. That arm's going to get better and being able to have that accuracy, have the ability to throw deep, do all that kind of stuff. a lot of it depends on that. But I think he is going to be one of the most intriguing Seahawks for for the next few years to come.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, like this is one of the weakest Alabama quarterback prospects we've had in a while. Because I mean, for the longest time, Nick Saban was churning out guys 24/7 who are great. But I don't know. He carries kind of a similar vibe to Jalen Hurts, in the way that he's a dual threat QB. Coming out of college, you wasn't sure how confident you were in him as a quarterback prospect and a guy who could lead a franchise in the future. But now look at where Jalen Hurts is now. And I'm not saying it's a direct comparison because I do think that Milroe is a weaker prospect than Hurts was when he came out of college.
Totally.
But the other interesting thing is we, for the longest time, especially under Pete Carroll, we never carried 3 quarterbacks. And we were, there's some teams in the NFL, a lot of teams in the NFL that do the 3 quarterback thing. But a long time, it was 2 QBs, and that's where we felt good at. But now we're going to 3 QBs, and I think that's great for his development. So I like Jalen Milroe. But I'm gonna move on to my number 2. For my number 2, I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I'm gonna do the tight end room. So I'm gonna combine AJ Barner and Elijah Arroyo together.
AJ Barner, huh?
Yeah,
Interesting.
I do like AJ Barner.
Yeah.
I think he's gonna have the starting job.
Okay.
I think he's at the top of the depth chart. And he's not a guy I feel like who stands out in any one specific area.
Yeah.
But he feels like a very, very prototypical tight end. I feel like he does everything solidly. He showed out a couple times last year. I do think he has the ability to be a big play threat. Yeah. So I like him. And then I think it's great to have the luxury of having 2 tight ends who are both young and can play off each other in different ways. And I think it gives us so much flexibility. And everything I've seen from Arroyo, I've loved. I really liked picking him where we did in the draft. I thought it was such a smart decision because, taking a tight end in the first round can be a gutsy call for a lot of teams. And there were some good prospects in the first round this year. You had Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland, both great guys. But I think us waiting and then taking a guy who's tall, big, and has receiving potential, I really like it.
Yeah, I know. Especially after we released Noah Fant, I was I was kind of sweating for this tight end room because I was trying to think who are we gonna be leaning on. But I think Barner with Arroyo is a good combo. Barner, like you're saying, Barner to me feels like the Jake Bobo of the tight end room, where it's
he does.
It's like you wouldn't not that he's underrated, but he has the potential to ball out in certain games. Like the one football game, Seahawks game I went to last year against the Vikings, where we played against Sam Darnold.
Yes, and how was that game too, by the way?
Yeah, we were both. I remember that. But Adrian Barner had a catch in the end zone. It was kind of an easy play. No one was on him because again they're probably underrating him a little bit because he's AJ Barner.
Yeah.
But so he has that kind of sneaky potential to be a really good tight end. And it's like you're saying, he's young. He has some room to develop. And I think that coming in this year, he could have a pretty breakout year. And then Arroyo obviously coming right out of the draft. He's kind of also been a standout in preseason and in their whole fall camp and everything. So I definitely think that initially when we released Noah Fant, I kind of was when I was reacting to that, I was like, okay, that's not great. I mean, granted, Noah Fant hadn't really been that great for us. He's been okay. He did really well with Denver and kind of fell off once he got here. So I'm okay with this tight end room. And I definitely think it's having the tight end room be your number 2 pick. I think that kind of going back to me putting Sam Darnold at number 4, it's so much rests on the offense and these offensive pieces that it makes sense to have it be number 2 or your number 2 pick.
I totally agree. And then we're going to number 1 now, aren't we?
Going to number 1,
All
yes.
right.
What's your number 1?
All right, so my number 1, I'm gonna steal one of your guys, Torrey Horton.
Okay.
Yeah, I really like him. I think he's gonna matter so much to this offense this year. Again, like I said earlier, he just provides so much. Makes it the wide receiver room so much more dynamic. It's a lot more interesting, and it was great to see another young guy break out. And because when we brought in MVS, before he got released, I felt good about it. I've never been a huge MVS guy, but he was solid kind of wide receiver 3 range guy when he was with the Packers, when he was with the Chiefs. You felt good about him, but then he came in and man, he really fell behind quick. And I really like releasing him. You save a little bit of money because you're going to give him $2.5 million to be our wide receiver 5, or maybe 4, whatever. And now that we have a guy like Horton coming in and really kind of locking down that 3rd spot, maybe 4th on a bad day.
Yeah.
I feel really good about that, to have a young guy who's cheap, who has a lot of potential, being our guy there. So I think he's going to really make our offense more dynamic, and I have a lot of faith in him. Yeah.
Yeah, I had him as my number 3. You have him as your number 1. So 2 picks separate those guys. I mean, I can respect having Torrey Horton at number 1. I think because again we've been like kind of harping on it, like beating the dead horse, where it's like the offense is such an important part for the Seahawks this year. Like if the offense doesn't click and we don't, because we're having to replace kind of a lot of guys. You're having to replace DK Metcalf. You're having to replace Noah Fant, Geno. There's just like there were so many holes coming into the year, and that's why I think we got really underrated in the national media, was because they're like, well, the Seahawks offense, what are they going to do? Like,
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And so that was I like having Torrey Horton at number 1. I think that a lot of it's going to rest on him. He's a pretty young guy, so a lot of pressure on him to kind of produce. And same thing for Arroyo too. But I have faith that they're going to do pretty good this year.
Yeah. I'm curious what you got.
Yeah, for my number 1. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to shock very many people with this, but I'm going to go Gray Zabel, my number 1 most intriguing
I like
Seahawk.
that. I really thought about throwing him in there.
Because, I mean, I say this because watching him in preseason gets me fired up. Because
Yeah, for sure.
he is, I think Brock Heward on Brock and Saul kind of used the analogy that he's Pitbull. Like when he breaks off the line and he has to block for his QB, he's fresh out of college, he's fresh out of the draft, going up against, I mean, granted some of these guys are backups at the end of the day, but like they're still NFL backups, and he is bullying them, like throwing them on the ground, rolling over on top of them. Like he's like one of those guys where you tell him like go after this guy, and he will go after him, and he won't stop until he's on the ground and and the play's over.
Right.
Like he goes until the whistle's blown. And so I think his intensity, his obvious love for Seattle, and the immediate impact he's having, like it's felt like in these preseason games, the O line for the Seahawks has made some huge strides, mainly because of Gray Zabel being there. And I mean, you wouldn't think that one guy on the O line can make that big of a difference, but it totally can, especially just strengthening. He's on the left side, so he's strengthening that left side so much that all of that put together makes to me Gray Zabel be the number 1 most intriguing Seahawk coming out of preseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's an older rookie, 23 years old, and I think that gives him a lot of sense of maturity, which is great. And again, I feel like I've heard a lot of good things about him being a good locker room presence already. And I mean, you kind of have some worry about a guy coming out of NDSU as a maybe more of an FCS level guy who hasn't faced significant competition, but that doesn't matter. He's got the technique, and most importantly, he's got the build, man. He's 6'6", 315. I mean, huge guy, and I love that. That's great, and it's so nice to see John Schneider finally investing in the O-line. Like, I mean, like we got by some years, and back when we had Russ, like the solution was always he can spin in circles all day and he'll figure it out, and that did win us the Super Bowl. Like spinning in circles and figuring it out. That's okay. I mean, we also had a little bit of a better offensive line then, but it's just great to like have a guy who's can ground the rest of the offensive line, and it makes me feel good that we're gonna have both a good run game and a good pass game potentially this year if we have a guy like him coming up there, and then we'll get Charles Cross back, we'll get Abraham Lucas back. I think we have potential to be a solid offensive line this year. Yeah,
dude, I didn't really realize how mobile of a quarterback Russell Wilson was, because I remember like going back and watching like some highlights of like Russell Wilson in his first like years as a Seahawk, and it's almost comical where it would just be like the O-line would just break apart and he would just scramble in the backfield for like a minute straight, and then it was stressful, and then just heave it up downfield and something like Tyler Lockett would catch it or something like that, and it was like I would just be laughing watching. So that's like most of the plays is just him scrambling. Right. We can't rely on that necessarily with Sam Darnold, because I don't think Sam Darnold's going to be that mobile of a quarterback. No. That's more like Jalen Milroe. Right. And we're not going to be leaning on him as much this year probably. So definitely having the strong O-line with Gray Zabel and we're getting some of those guys back, that's going to help out a lot. But yeah, no, man, I miss Russell Wilson sometimes. Prime Russell Wilson was fun to watch.
That was a good player. And I think this might be a funny conversation to have someday, but like he's got to be like a top 10 most stressful quarterback to watch all time. Like making a list of top 10 most stressful guys to watch, he's got to be up there. It's stressful, but he gets it done. Like, he does get it done. He does the job at the end of the day. And also, like, this is completely different conversation to have another time. But like, I think he's going to be pretty solid with the Giants this year. I think so too. He's at least a starting level quarterback. Yeah. Maybe not top 10 in the league right now, but he should be pretty good. Yeah, he can hold his own. Yeah. But so, Connor, thank you so much for being on today. We've gone way over our time. I was hoping to get into a little schedule prediction breakdown, but we do have to hop off the air and get you guys back to the tunes on KUGR.
Connor, any last words before we close the episode today?
No, thanks for having me on. I kind of forgot about this morning, not gonna lie. I rolled out of bed and then I was like, oh, Ohio State's on. And I watched the Ohio State-Texas game. By the way, screw the Buckeyes, but they won anyway. And but yeah, I'm happy to be here, made it over here, and it was a good time talking to you. So
Got you. Thank you guys so much for listening. We will be back on next week. Coug game today. We'll be going to that, so go Cougs. I'm looking forward to that. But that's going to do it for this episode of Slice of Seattle on KUGR Cougar College Radio. Remember, it's a great day to have a great day, and go Cougs.